Hello, everyone. It is very nice to have you all with us this evening, afternoon. Welcome to our session today. All right. So thank you for being here with us for this information session. Your cameras and your microphones are muted for the session, but you have access to the chat box, and you can ask your questions to Q&A Alfredo. He will be collecting your questions for today's session, and we'll be addressing those later today towards the end of the presentation, but please feel free to write your questions. Today, we're going to be talking about do's and don'ts of contacting university representatives for undergraduate application. So all of you are in that moment where you are starting to create these connections, these conversations with university reps, and we wanted to help you navigate that in the best way possible, so you create also your best image for the university. So today, just a little bit of an introduction for Education USA. We are a network of advising centers all over the world. If you're connecting from Mexico, we have 26 advising centers in Mexico, and we have centers all over the region in Central America, South America, and then the rest of the world. If you don't know where your closest advising center is, please feel free to contact us, and we can direct you to your nearest advising center. And our main job is we provide information. We give information for everyone who is interested in doing higher education in the United States at accredited universities. We provide sessions like this. We do more also hands-on webinars also, for example, when you need to write your essays or how to contact people for letters of recommendations. Everything that we do has to do with the admissions process. We provide information that is comprehensive, current, objective, and free. And as part of our services, we also try to bring you closer to university representatives. And today we have the honor of being joined by Megan and Kwe. Kwe is having a little bit of a technical problems connecting with us, but we have Megan today, and she is going to take us also through the information today. So thank you so much, Megan, for being here with us. We heard that you have had a lot of presentations today, so we do really appreciate your time and your great energy and your willingness to share your this valuable information with our audience. So thank you. We're all yours.
Thank you so much for having me. Yeah, this I think is my fourth presentation today, but honestly, this is my favorite part of my job, is connecting with students like you guys who are going through this process. It can be pretty confusing at times. You're not really sure what you should be doing, what you don't need to do. So I hope today we can help clarify, some of those things that maybe you didn't think about, or maybe you should be thinking about as you're doing your applications. So we can go to the first slide. So as Juan Manuel was just saying, your first impression is going to be very important in this process, because one way to think about your university applications, it's like a job interview, and you always want to go into an interview making the best first impression that you can. But of course, the biggest difference is it's not necessarily going to be in person. So how do you do this digitally? How do you do this through email or connecting with us on WhatsApp or Facebook or things like this, especially when some universities you might be looking at handle thousands of applications every semester. So how do you make sure you're getting your questions answered, making a good impression, but, not overstepping in some ways? So we're going to go through some things that you should be doing and then things that you don't need to be doing. So that way it saves everybody time and helps you with that impression. Go to the next slide. So when you're first making that introduction to yourself, things that you should be doing, definitely be proactive and research the university. One of the things that's come out of the pandemic in this last year and a half is we have all spent a lot of time on our websites, updating them to make sure that all of the information you need is there, that there are virtual tours that are available to you, and lots of content, which we know can be a lot to go through. But we do want to see that you've done some of your research and answered some of those basic questions for yourself, such as, are you test optional? Or which English language proficiency exams do you need? You can try to find those answers first for yourself, especially if you look for the international admissions page. Many universities will have a separate page available for you just for international admissions that will be very clear cut about the things that we do need, such as the TOEFL or IELTS, or do we accept Duolingo, exams like that. And then once you've kind of gone through and understood the basic information, if you can't find the answer or if it's not clear to you, that's definitely a great time to reach out to somebody like me and ask for clarification. The things that you shouldn't do, definitely don't send me an email asking for basic information like, what is your, minimum SAT score? Well, if you went to my website, you'd see that we're test optional. So there is no minimum score because you don't even have to have it if you don't want to. So make sure that you're thinking through, those basic questions, do the research yourself, and don't necessarily email me unless you're just not sure. And then if you do send me an email or an admissions counselor an email, wait until we respond. It could take a couple of days. There are times of the year that could be very busy reading applications or giving presentations like this. So sometimes it could take us a few days to get back to you. So while you're waiting, make sure that you don't send us more emails or call us or text us or anything like that, because that just adds to all of the things that we have to get back to. So we do really appreciate your patience, while you wait for our response. So one of the things that you could do as well, make sure that you ask for help for somebody like your university or guidance counselor at your high school or Education USA. If there are things that you're not sure about the general process, such as when do applications open and what do deadlines look at, or what types of universities might be a good fit for me, those are great questions to go to either your counselor or to Education USA with. Part of what they're trained to do is to understand the entire system and help you figure out what is going to be a good fit, and they can help narrow down those lists for you. Definitely make sure you're coming to webinars like this one, where you can get to know about different universities that maybe you haven't heard of before, or start thinking through different programs or different things that might be important to you in the university process. Definitely look for opportunities to meet with as many admissions representatives as you can, because this will also help you understand all of the different universities that exist in the US. Did you know that there's over 4,000 universities in the US alone? That's a lot to think through and a lot of different things to consider in this process. So going to educational fairs like the Education USA virtual fair that happens, or coming to these webinars, or if your high school is putting on any sort of virtual fairs, make sure that you're taking the time to go to those and chat with people like me. But definitely don't assume things. If you're not clear about something, make sure to ask. We are here to help you and to help support you, but we want to make sure that we're giving you the fastest and most direct answers that we can. So never hesitate to reach out. Ask someone else to communicate with the university on your behalf is also not a good thing to do. I know sometimes you might have your parents doing something for you, or you might have a teacher do something for you. But when it comes to your college applications, this is something that you should be responsible for, and you should really take ownership of this process. So make sure it's only you that's contacting us. And then make sure you're being careful about getting advice from unofficial sources. Sometimes you might hear things from other students or other teachers or maybe a relative, and sometimes it's not always right. You know how quickly rumors can spread, or how, one student might get a special scholarship that everybody thinks that they're going to get a special scholarship. And that sometimes that's just not really how it works. So make sure that you are only getting your best advice from official sources like the universities of ourselves, or from Education USA or your high school counselor. So now let's look at a couple examples, and you can say in your head, or you can put it in the chat box if you think this is a good email or a bad email. So we'll start at the top left corner, where the email just says in the subject line, unofficially transcript, and then there's just 2 attachments. Is this a good email or not a good email? Spoiler alert, definitely not a good email. I don't know who you are. You should at least introduce yourself and put your name. How am I gonna know who to even put this or send this, add it to your application if I don't even know your name? Also double checking if we even accept unofficial transcripts, and definitely spell checking. We'll go to the next one with the pink bubbles. All it says is, please, I wanted admission. Also probably not a great email. I'm happy that you want to be admitted, but I don't know anything about you to help you answer any questions or give you any advice. On the bottom left corner, I think they need to put scholarship in the headline or the subject line, but it's not spelled correctly. And then it said, I did pass higher national diploma in computing from Pakistan. The best Lahore Institute name. Well, I'm going to stop reading there because there's a lot of spelling mistakes. So definitely double check your spelling and grammar before you send these emails. And then the last one in the middle, it just says, how can I apply? Once again, one of those basic questions that you could probably find at our website. But like I said, if you visited the website and you are confused, then you should reach out directly to me to get a clarification on your question. So here are some examples of some good emails. So we'll only look at one of them. So let's look at the bottom left corner. So it says, dear sir, have a good day. I mean, that's a great way to start an email. That puts a smile on my face and makes me feel good. I already paid my application fee and sent in my Duolingo score through the portal. I applied as a credit transfer student, as I'm already in a program in South Korea, and here's my transcript. Please find the attached document, and then their name. I think it's a great example. It starts off at a very pleasant note. It has their full name. It directly states why they're emailing you and the information that I need then to make sure it gets put in their application. So you do have to find that balance of making sure it's a direct question that I know exactly what you're looking for. Please don't write a novel though, because you don't want to write a novel. I don't want to read a novel. And it has all the relevant information like your name, what attachments might be on the email, things like that. So you can go to the next slide. So some other things to think about as you're communicating. So one of the things that I just said in that last example is paying attention to email etiquette in the greetings. That was such a nice greeting. I hope you're having a nice day. That definitely starts off with a light mood. It makes me feel good. And I try to do the same when I respond to students and say, I also hope you're having a great day because I know it makes you feel good. So having a proper greeting and closing is always a good thing to think about. Make sure you put an email subject on there that makes sense and is spelled correctly. Identifying yourself so I know who to talk to, especially if you're asking a very specific question about your application, then I can actually look at your application and answer your question. If I don't know who you are, I may not be able to answer your questions. Be clear and concise and proofread. Make sure sometimes, if possible, I know depending on how you're responding to emails, this could be difficult, but try to respond on the same communication chain. So that way, if I haven't talked to you in maybe a couple weeks, it's easy for me to go back through the chain and remind myself the conversation that we've been having. Make sure to subscribe to university's communication so you can also stay in touch with us. I know, for example, I've built out a pretty long communication plan for students that helps you every step of the way. So that way, if your application is incomplete, you'll actually get reminders saying, this is what we're still missing, this is how you can submit them, and here's how to contact me if you have questions. But you only get these things if you make sure that you subscribe to our emails. Make sure you follow our social media. We do a lot of work to stay up to date on our social media. It's also a great way for you to get to know our universities and see what they look like, what they feel like, what students are doing. So if you're active on Facebook, which I know only old people are on Facebook now, but definitely on Instagram. I don't know how many universities are on TikTok. I haven't seen many come up on my TikTok yet, but there could be some out there. And then check if a university is also accessible through things like WhatsApp, Messenger, and other chats. For example, I use WhatsApp and it's published on our website, so you could always send me a quick WhatsApp message, which sometimes can be a good way to get a faster response from me, especially if it's a very quick question, such as, do you guys accept Duolingo? And I can easily respond and say, yes, and here's the minimum score we need. Things don't ignore email etiquette, especially when it comes to proofreading. Make sure that you do a quick proofread, at the very least, to make sure that your question is clear and that your information is on there so I know who I'm talking to. Don't send me an email and CC a bunch of other emails. This is definitely not a good look. I know, as I said, there's over 4,000 universities in the US, so it can take some time to contact those that you want to contact. But it's in your best interest to make sure you're reaching out individually to each university and show that you've done the research on that university. Don't address the wrong university either, meaning don't send me an email and say, Dear Harvard, I am not Harvard. And that's okay. But make sure you know who you're talking to and who you're sending an email to. Don't email a lot of different people in my office if you're waiting for a response from me. Generally, what happens is all of those people then forward your email to me, and then it just adds to my inbox and it will take me longer to get back to you. So make sure that you're sticking with the person who you know is your assigned admissions counselor, and just make sure sometimes that you have that patience to wait for a response. Don't be afraid of requesting a virtual meeting to go through your questions. This is a great opportunity for you to sit down and have a conversation with me. I would love if we could meet in person right now, but that's just not the reality of the situation we're in. But I would love to set up 15 minutes or 20 minutes to chat with you on Zoom. And that way you could get all of your questions answered at one time. You could ask follow-up questions if things aren't clear anymore. But I do know that sometimes it can be a little scary to reach out to somebody you don't know. But remember, that's part of my job, is that I'm here to support you and I want to talk to you and I want to support you through this process. And I promise I'm a really nice person and I really want to get to know you. And then another thing to not do is don't use different email addresses to email us. One of the things that we do see a lot of times with students, especially in high school, is sometimes you might have an email address associated with your high school, and then maybe you have a personal like Gmail or Yahoo account. Make sure you're only using one of those to communicate with us, because that's the email address that we have attached to your application file. Or if I'm searching through our history to pull up a message that I sent earlier, I want to make sure that I can easily find that information for you. Go to the next slide. So some other things that might come up during this process is submitting your documents, which can be a little tricky, especially depending on the support you have at your high school, and sometimes the type of documents that we need. So make sure that you understand how we prefer to receive your documents. universities in the US can be really picky about this process. So some might need official documents directly from your high school. Some will accept unofficial documents, such as if you were to email me your transcripts. Some universities still require things by snail mail, which I think is crazy. And then some universities you could just email your documents to. So make sure that you know what the preference is, because if you email a university your documents, those are considered unofficial. And if they require official documents for your application, they're not going to review your application without them. So always double check this. Many universities now also use an admissions portal. So once you apply, you'll get an email saying, here's the link to the portal and your temporary password. You go and set your new password. And a lot of times you'll see a checklist of the documents that we need. And as you send them in, they'll come off the checklist. So make sure that you're always checking your admissions portals for updates. We also post other things in your portals like reminders for virtual events or reminders for deadlines, things like that. So it's always good practice to make sure you're checking that portal once or twice a week. It's also where we release your decision for your admission. So if you want to see if you're admitted, that's also a good place to check. And then make sure that you have your documents translated to English. So for example, if your transcripts are in Spanish, make sure that you are using an authorized translator to make sure that they're translated to English. If you're not sure who an authorized translator is, you can always reach out to Education USA and they may be able to point you in the right direction for somebody to help you with those services. Other things to avoid though, don't email often asking for updates. This is part of why we have a portal. So you can log into the portal and see if there's updates are there. Document processing can take some time, especially at certain times of the year. So for example, usually in October and November, it could take up to 2 or 3 weeks for your documents to be processed. Whereas if you were to send your documents today, it may only take a day or two. So you do have to consider the time of year and that sometimes there's going to be a delay in this process. And then of course, one of my biggest pieces of advice for students, don't wait until the deadline to apply or send your documents. One of the things about the American culture is that we are very deadline driven. And if you miss a deadline, we're usually not very forgiving about it. And this is the same in the application process as it is when you're a student in the US. If you forget to submit your paper for your class by midnight, your professor is probably going to say, too bad, you get a 0. And it's kind of the same way in the admissions process. If you know a university has a deadline of December 1st, for example, make sure you set an internal deadline for yourself to have everything submitted by November 14th. So that way you have a little bit of a cushion if you need another day or two to perfect your essay or to get that letter of recommendation. You don't have to stress about it being sent in, at 12:01 instead of midnight. So we talked about sending in documents. So another trick to think about is, remember how we talked about sending multiple emails? So it's kind of the same if you can send in documents. So make sure that you attach all of your documents to one email and make sure that they're actually attached, such as in a PDF. If you send us a Google link or a Google Drive, generally we can't open those and we can't import those into your application. Same as if you send them as a picture like a JPEG. Also, the systems that we use won't allow us to save a JPEG or upload a JPEG. So I highly recommend sending everything that you're sending as an attachment as a PDF. It'll make the process so much easier. And also, go ahead and put them all in one email because then it's very easy for me to say, I know who the student is and upload them right all at one time into your application. Then of course, be mindful of the size, mainly because our email boxes as universities have limits of what will be accepted. Otherwise, it could go to spam and you don't want your documents to go into our spam folder. So make sure you're thinking about the size limit and keeping it below, 5 megabytes if you can. So as a reiteration, don't attach one document per email. It's going to take us a long time to get through them, and it could take you multiple days then as you're waiting to see any updates. Don't send the same documents multiple times. Like I said, there are times of the year that it could take us a week or 2 weeks to process your documents, but please make sure, or please trust in us that when we get your documents, we're working on it. If you see at the end of 1 or 2 weeks that they haven't been added to your application, just shoot one of us an email and say, hey, I submitted these documents 2 weeks ago, just making sure you have them. I'm ready to send them again if you need them. Don't send documents that we don't ask for. So one funny story about this is I had a student once who decided to send me every certificate they've ever gotten in their life, including a certificate they got from donating blood. Donating blood is a very thoughtful thing to do for your community, but it's not going to help you in the admissions process. So be thoughtful and mindful of the documents that you're sending that support your application. Don't send additional documents if we don't ask for it. Another example is a lot of students think that more letters of recommendation is better. But if we only ask for 1 or 2 letters of recommendation, just keep it to 1 or 2 recommendations. Don't send us 5 or 10 of them. And then definitely don't send falsified or plagiarized documents. There are some students who think, oh, I'll never get caught. We will catch you. We've seen everything. So don't even try. It's just not in your best interest. Make sure that you're being honest and you're really showcasing who you are as a student. So I think with that, I feel like I just threw so much information at you guys in about 30 minutes. So if you have any questions, definitely put them in, send them to Q&A Alfredo, and he'll make sure that your questions get answered. In the meantime, while you're thinking about some questions, I am going to tell you a little bit about my university. Because maybe you've never heard of Creighton University, and that's okay. Like I said, there's over 4,000 universities. So Creighton University is located in Omaha, Nebraska. So we are right in the middle of the US. We are also on the central time zone. My university is about 150 years old, so we've been around for a little while. We have about 150 different undergraduate academic programs, but there's 2 categories of programs we're best known for. We can go to the next slide. So we are a Catholic Jesuit institution. That's where we were founded. We have a beautiful church in the middle of campus, but you don't have to be Catholic to come to Creighton. In fact, we have students from every single faith background that come here. We have about 9,000 students total on campus that come from all 50 states of the US and about 50 countries of the world. One of my favorite statistics, though, about our diversity is that over 80% of our students come from outside of our home state, which means even for you, an international student, if you were to come here and your roommate's American, there's actually a good chance that they're coming from either Minnesota, California, Hawaii, or the East Coast, which is really interesting to think for the middle of the country. We purposely keep our class sizes small with an average class size of about 20 students with an 11-to-1 student to faculty ratio. That one-on-one component with you and a faculty member is very important to us because our faculty really want to make sure that you succeed in whatever program you're thinking about. But they want to make sure that they're accessible for you to answer questions and to be there to really support you. Go to the next slide. So as I mentioned, we have about 150 different academic programs. And there's 2 categories of programs we're best known for. The first is going to be sciences, especially related to healthcare. We're very popular for students to study pre-medicine, pre-dentistry, pre-pharmacy, pre-physical or occupational therapy, and many of them choose to stay at our professional school afterwards. In fact, our medical school is one of the few in the US that accepts international students. We're also very well known for business. And I'll tell you a little bit later on why, but part of it's because of our location. I'm going to share some fun facts about Omaha with you. But no matter which pathway you go into, our students are very successful. As you can see, so this statistic is actually 2 years old, was that 99% of our students either had a job or went to graduate school within 6 months of graduation. I just got the updated statistic the other day, and even in the pandemic, last year, 97% of our students either had a job or went to graduate school within 6 months of graduation. So our students tend to do very, very well. And it's partially because we give you a top-ranked education in the classroom, but we're also giving you excellent opportunities outside of the classroom to really build on your skills and practice what you've learned in the classroom. We are top-ranked for undergraduate research. We have amazing internship opportunities for you, including we're the only university in the world with a completely student-run Apple store on our campus. So as a business student, you could run your own Apple store by the time you graduate, which is pretty cool. We can go to the next slide. So one of the questions I've always asked, other than where is Omaha, is why Omaha? Why would people come to Omaha, Nebraska? So there's actually some really, really interesting things about this city. And I will tell you, I moved here 5 years ago. I lived outside of Chicago and I was worried about moving to Omaha. But I have to tell you, it's such a cool city. So we are the top city in the world for Fortune 500 companies. So if you think of the 500 largest companies in the world, over 100 of them have offices or headquarters in Omaha. So remember when I was talking about those internships? Those are the companies hiring our students for internships. So you could get some of the most amazing internships. Speaking of, we are the #1 city in the US for paid internships. Last year on average, our students made over $17 an hour at their internship, which is quite a lot for an intern, actually. We're also the best city in the US for college grads and the #2 city for millennials to be hired. A big reason for this is because of those Fortune 500 companies who are really looking to hire young talent and keep those employees there long term. But I have to tell you my all-time favorite fact about Omaha. We are the #2 foodie city in the US. Any type of food in the world you want, you can get here. And I'm not saying like, the typical Mexican restaurant, but like true, authentic Mexican food. Or if you want Venezuelan food or Chilean food, you can get literally anything you want, which is amazing. And honestly, it's what saved me in this last year and a half not being able to travel because I do love eating good food around the world. At least I could get it here. We can go to the next slide. So a quick review of our application. It's actually pretty straightforward to apply to Creighton. It's also free. So you can either do the Common App or our own application. It doesn't matter which one you do. We don't preference one over the other. We need your personal statement or essay, your high school transcripts, and a letter of recommendation. We are test optional. So if you don't want to take the SAT or ACT, you don't have to, or if you're just not able to, you don't have to worry about it. We will consider you for admission and scholarships, regardless of your test ability. And then we do need an official English language proficiency exam. We accept Duolingo, which I highly recommend since you can take it at home. It's less expensive than other options, and we get your results in usually about 72 hours. So it's a great, opportunity for students to get their test scores done quickly. We can go to the last slide. And that's my contact information. So like I said, I do share my WhatsApp with everybody. So if you have a question, make sure you double check our website first. But if you're not sure, you can't find the answer, you could always shoot me an email or shoot me a WhatsApp message. I'd be happy to help you through this process. Like I said, it can be a little complicated and confusing sometimes. So definitely know that you have me here for your support. So I think with that, we have some time for Q&A.
Yes. Thank you so much, Megan.
You're welcome.
Alfredo, do we have any questions?
Yes, we do. Okay, actually, we have several questions.
Oh, good.
All right.
Okay, first of all, if I have doubts regarding of a communication, is it possible to get direct advising about the correctness of my emails?
Absolutely. I think that's definitely a great thing to reach out to Education USA about. Especially if you are writing an email and you're just not sure if it's clear, or if you just want to double check that you're asking the right questions, definitely use the Education USA advisors as somebody to bounce your emails off of and your questions off of.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, second one. Is there a directory for authorized translators that the university accepts?
Ooh, that's a tough question. So there's a list of places that we accept if you need to get like your credits and your classes translated to the US system. But when it comes to a straight translation, I would honestly defer to Education USA to see if they know of anybody locally that they would trust. Or sometimes you could also ask us, for example, if your transcripts or something, or maybe your letter of recommendation is all in Spanish, you could always send me an email and say, if I submit this in Spanish, do you have somebody to help that could help you translate it internally? Because the answer sometimes can be yes. My Spanish personally is pretty rusty, although I can usually make it through a letter of recommendation, but I could always also reach out to Education USA or one of my faculty members on campus to help translate it if I need to.
Is
Right,
it a
and
good,
if I may just add to that, sorry, Alfredo. But yeah, so I would say each of the advisors, depending on the in the area, knows at least a couple of certified translators that can help you on the process of translating your documents. I know, for example, in Mexico City, they have a list of all like alphabetical order of all the different translators that you can contact. And many of us in different cities will be able to help you with that too. So for sure, contact your Education USA Center.
thank you. Okay. Is it a good idea to include our Education USA advisor in our emails as a CC? Does that leave a bad impression or a good one?
I think personally, that would probably give me a good impression because I know then that you've reached out to other people for advice and that you're really trying to make sure you're making the best, the best good impression that you can or the best impression you can. As long as you're not asking them to send me an email on your behalf, that would probably give me a bad impression. But I think if you CC them on it, it shows that you're really trying to get support from everywhere that you can in the process.
The next one. Can we email universities to ask for fee waivers? If so, what are some tips for writing this kind of emails?
It's a good question. So you can, here's a few tips. One, double check that the university even needs a fee waiver. So for example, I do have students who reach out to me for a fee waiver, but our application is free, so you don't need a fee waiver. So always double check with the university first if they even have an application fee. Then if they do, I think it's okay to reach out to them, but make sure in your email that you are providing context for why you need a fee waiver and why this is going to support you in this process. Make sure that you show that you've done research on this institution and that you really believe that this institution could be a good fit for you. So you need to show that you've done some of the legwork already, because we don't want to give fee waivers out to everybody. We want to give them to students who we truly believe could be admitted and could be a successful student here.
Once all of our questions have been answered, should we reply to the last email saying thank you to the person that attended us?
It's a good question and a tough line, right? Because we said don't email too much, but I think sending a quick thank you is polite. It's a great way to end the conversation, show that you understand the last thing that maybe I replied to you, and just being very polite and very kind and appreciative in the process. So I will say, like, when I get an email that just like says, thank you very much, I appreciate your support, it does continue to give me a very positive vibe of that student. And when that student reaches out again, I'm definitely more than willing to help them, knowing that they're being very genuine in their questions.
While asking questions to the university, how much should we tell about ourselves as an introduction?
Another good question. So I want to know things like what high school are you at, or what city are you located in right now? What are you thinking about studying? And what are some aspects that you like about my university that makes you want to reach out to me? You don't need to tell me how many siblings you have or what your dog's name is. Except maybe if you want to study veterinary science, and then you could tell me about your dog. So I don't need your whole life history, but enough where I really get a good understanding of who you are.
Should we send our emails at a specific time slot, for example, from 7 a.m. to 3 p.m., or is it okay if we send them at any time?
I would say it's probably okay to send them at any time. But if you send me an email at 2 o'clock in the morning, don't expect a response at 2 o'clock in the morning. Just know that our working hours in the US generally are 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. So typically that's when you're going to get a response. But you could send it, like, for example, if you're having a conversation with your parents at 8 o'clock at night and you guys have a question or need a clarity, it's okay at that moment to send that email while you're thinking about it and while it's fresh in your mind. Just know that you probably won't get a response until the next day.
For Creighton, is the Scott Scholars Program available for international students?
Oh, that's a good question. If you shoot me an email, I would love to tell you more about this program and some of our other programs as well in the Heider College of Business that are pretty awesome.
Right, and I have the last question here for the moment. For my recommendation letter, is it important that the teacher I choose as a subject that is related for my career choice?
No, it doesn't have to be. I always say pick a teacher who you feel like knows you best as a student. If you're thinking about studying sciences, it doesn't have to be a science student or a science teacher. It can really be somebody that you feel like can really speak to who you are as a student.
Right, thank you. Okay, those are all the questions that I have until this
Awesome. Those
moment.
are great questions, everybody.
I know. I feel super proud of those questions. Well, I think then if we don't have any other questions from the audience, Megan, thank you so much for this great presentation and all the great content. As questions showed, it was very productive, and they were really interested. And I'm glad that we had this opportunity to share this information as students are navigating precisely this type of communication during these days, and we're helping them to do that in a better way. So we really appreciate your time. Any final thoughts? Any final message that you want to tell us?
My final thought, honestly, is that don't hesitate to reach out to somebody for help. If you really have a question you need answered, you're just not sure, definitely reach out to Education USA. Reach out to your admissions officers. We are here to help you. We want you to be successful on this confusing and sometimes conflicting path at times. So don't be shy. We're here to help you, but also don't email us 100 times in 5 minutes.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone. Make sure to follow Creighton University on their social media, also Education USA, and all of the social media. Stay tuned for all of our next events, and we will see you soon. Have a great rest of your evening, everyone. Goodbye.
Hi, everybody.